Running a little late, but that is okay. Appreciate y'all taking time out, coming to hang out with me. If you're not watching this, you should be watching 68J's event. We got Mickle up on stage. Should be like right now. Being interviewed by Eleanor Terrett and a few other people. Here for XRP Vegas, Bitcoin Vegas this week. Excited for everything that's going on. Ripple is taking Vegas by storm. Continue to promote XRP and Ripple and their services across all the billboards here. Is there no sound, Mike? Okay. All right. Well, hopefully you guys can hear me. Let me know over there in the chat if you guys can hear me. I didn't plug my microphone in because my phone's got a charge and I've been running around all day. Let me know in the chat if y'all can hear me. Yes, no, maybe. Y'all should be able to. Nobody is commenting. So I'm going to assume. Okay, cool. All right, people can hear me. Lots of stuff happening for the macro. I don't know if you guys are watching this or not, but oil has spiked. It looks like stocks have topped. We had the FOMC today, and they held everything. They have not moved. The yen is back over 160, trending toward 161, 162 for the Bank of Japan to have to intervene here. So I am watching that like a hawk, which I'm sure you guys are also. We also have the OCC's oversight on stablecoins going live this Friday, May 1st. Unless they kick the can because the banks asked for it, which I don't think they're going to, we will have the green light for them to go ahead and let the reverse carry trade unwind here. That's what I've been talking about. You know, a lot of people said we need the Clarity Act. We don't need the Clarity Act. We just need the OCC to give guidance on stablecoins and how the yield's going to work for all of that. And now we have it. So as of Friday this week, the banks and institutions will be able to start, rolling out their stable coins. Bank of America, JP Morgan, Citi, you name it. I would expect them to be issuing those stable coins in short order, either Friday or next week. So I don't know if, things happen between now and then, or if they're next week, or what all is going to happen. But it's very interesting to me that we are here in Vegas, and XRP Vegas is the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday of this week. A lot of lore out there about May the 4th be with you. So we'll have to see if May is going to be a happy month. But everything's lining up here for all of the catalysts that I've been talking about for more than 2 years to take place. And as the domino theory unfolds, I think that many of the things that we've been waiting on are finally gonna roll out here. So excited to see all the stuff at Vegas today. We had, I was on a panel with Zach Townsend, who runs Meanwhile, and Jeff. I can't think of Jeff's last name, but he runs Unchained. He's the CEO there. And then Wyatt, who's also another RIA in the space, and he only manages Bitcoin. So obviously, those three are very Bitcoin centric. I was the oddball out, advocating for the whole crypto space, but also, obviously with an affinity for XRP. All the same stuff applies, though, right? If you're looking to manage your wealth and make sure that you're mitigating risk, structuring things the right way, mitigating taxes, it could apply to Bitcoin. It could apply to any of these other digital assets that you expect to generate significant returns, either in the short term or the long term. So excited for all of that. Meanwhile has a really interesting product for their Bitcoin. They do in-kind life insurance. We've also got a group here called Milo. They do lending for residential properties on your digital assets. So they'll cross-collateralize your Bitcoin, your XRP, your Solana, your Ethereum, and help you buy a home. If you don't want to have to sell the assets for the down payment, they can help set it up that way, or they can just do your whole mortgage. You just post the collateral in whatever digital asset you have, one of those four, and they will work with you to create the mortgage on the home that you want to buy. So continue to push things forward across the board, codify partnerships with different people in the space. They're doing unique things, bringing financial products to life for crypto. And obviously, we want to use XRP and XLM and HBAR and XDC and all the other fun stuff that a lot of you guys are invested in to be able to, take advantage of those same opportunities and create products around that for you guys. Also had our lunch today with Michael from 2 Prime. He's our CEO. Probably one of the most progressive panels here at Bitcoin Vegas. At least that's not coming from me. That's coming from 3 or 4 different people that attended the lunch that were at multiple other stages listening to all the other people speak. And they said, look, like what you guys are doing is cutting edge. It's always, it's on the front line of where the space is going. And so it's just really cool to hear, humbling. We do a lot, and we're trying to work on these things and make sure that we're creating products and solutions that the market actually want. And so to hear that from other people as feedback is always nice. This person's asked, is any news on Evernorth? I haven't seen anything. I'm sure that you would hear from them directly if we had news that their S4 had been approved. But it wouldn't surprise me if we did see that this week. I think today or yesterday was the 20-day mark for the SEC to basically deny their application. So maybe that's the announcement that Brad Garlinghouse is going to make this week at XRP Vegas. The other thing that I think we might see is the Fed Master Account. So, with the stablecoin regulation coming through, the only thing that really stands between Ripple and their ability to operate as a fully chartered bank and participate and do ACH and all the other stuff that they want to do is their Fed Master Account. So I think between Evernorth and the Fed Master Account, those are the 2 things that I would be interested to see as announcements from Ripple this week here at XRP Vegas. John Deaton spoke at 68J's event. Love hearing him. Josh Nelson was up there on stage. Love seeing him. Many of the other influencers that you guys watch on a regular basis, I'm sure, outside of me, were there at the event. So again, shout out to 68J for having me. I'm hosting that event. A lot smaller barrier to entry and cost for people that are participating there at that event this week versus going to XRP Vegas. Nothing wrong with XRP Vegas. Awesome event. Brad and DAI always put on a great show, have a lot of great vendors there. But, I'm excited that 68J put this on for people that maybe don't have the, full amount of cash that you need to pay for a ticket to go to the larger event. And he brought a lot of value. There was a lot of really good people in the room talking about a lot of cool things. He had Flair there. I got to listen to Hugo talk about all the things that they're going to be rolling out with the vaults and other infrastructure that they're creating. Got to catch up with Eddie and the team. So a lot of good people there at that event. And again, if you haven't watched that live, if you're watching this one and you want to catch that one, I think that's a good way to go about it. So again, a lot of people, I see y'all in the chat putting oil out. Oil is moving significantly higher, like 15% today on Brent crude, on Brent and crude here domestically in the U.S. Crude's back at 109, Brent's all the way at almost $120 per barrel, and we've seen priced in yen, we're back over 17,000 yen per barrel. The Bank of Japan is going to have to move here. They held rates just earlier this week, and so did the Fed. If the Fed had lowered interest rates here, it would have given them the ability to kick the can a little bit because their currency would have appreciated against the dollar. But again, the Fed's between a rock and a hard place. If they lower interest rates, we're going to see higher inflation. If they raise interest rates, then they're probably going to have more problems with the credit, private credit funds. So they just held, this is Powell's last meeting today. They're going to, bring in the next Fed chair, whether that's Warsh or Miss Judy Sheldon. We'll see who it ends up being. But very exciting times. Looks like everything, like I said, that I've been talking about is finally playing out here. And like I said, once we have the OCC's green light on stablecoins for the banks and institutions, I would expect that they will start issuing those in droves, and that will then allow the reverse carry trade to unwind because there will be enough demand domestically for those treasuries out of, as people rotate out of those in the foreign markets and those flow back here. We have to have some way to be able to stabilize the bond market, and that's what the OCC is doing. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into the questions. I'm going to hang out for about 45 minutes today. Unfortunately, we do have our event this evening, and I've got another dinner that I've got to attend. So just so y'all know my schedule. Woke up. We had breakfast for Carbon 3 in the Mastermind early this morning. Went and spoke on stage at Bitcoin. went and hosted the lunch, went to 6-8J's event. I'm on the live, and then we have our event. Actually, I have another dinner and then our event this evening. So back to back to back all day long, but wouldn't have it any other way. So, all right, let's jump into it here. We got Brad. He says, "Hey Jake, happy DWP and Carbon One here. Awesome, dude. Love what you are doing. When yield comes out, will XRP still be held at Anchorage, or will there be a line of credit against it? Just reflect it in there." So ideally, it's held at Anchorage. That's the way that we would like to structure it, so that it stays right there in your account. They're building out a SMA structure for us. Fidelity already has that. So if Fidelity would custody XRP, we could facilitate what we're looking to out of their infrastructure. The product that we brought to market with Bitcoin is exactly that. Your Bitcoin sits in the infrastructure there at Fidelity, gets aggregated and reflected without ever moving with 2 Prime, and then 2 Prime uses that liquidity to then be able to generate additional returns on the Bitcoin. We'd be doing the same thing with the assets, depending on who we partner with. The assets should be able to sit there at Anchorage and then just get reflected off exchange, so that there's no counterparty risk. If somebody else were to go bankrupt, you're not a creditor in that situation. That's our main deal. And then obviously, we want to mitigate volatility risk, because if, God forbid, something happens and XRP goes down substantially, there could be capital called away. We've done really well with that up to this point. On 1010, we had no assets called away. So it was 9 times larger a liquidation than we saw for FTX back in the day. So I'm pretty happy with our counterparties and how we've structured everything. And we'll continue to look to mitigate risk in the same manner on these other products. And again, like, trying to strike a balance here. It's not easy. There's lots of products we could just roll people into, but they just don't meet the risk parameters and the suitability requirements that we have as an SEC registered RIA. We're a fiduciary. We have to make sure that things are done a very specific way. We're mitigating risk. And if there are risks, those need to be disclosed to our clients to make sure that they understand them before participating in products. So we will escalate up the risk curve. There will be things that we offer in DeFi and other stuff that is riskier as we integrate that with institutional custody and some of the other partners that we have. But all of those risks will be disclosed to the clients that we have that are working with us to make sure that they understand those and that they're appropriate. They're taking the appropriate risk based on their suitability standards and their risk profile. So to answer your question in short order, yes, they will sit there at Anchorage, because that's the way that I want it done. Imaginary Friend says, Jake, we're at $160 to yen. What is the domino theory here? How will we know when the reverse carry trade is happening for real? So last time, you'll see the Bank of Japan intervene. They will have to raise interest rates. So they will come out, their currency will strengthen against the dollar, and we will fall away from that. You'll then start to see markets collapse. You'll start to see the Nikkei have effects with that. You'll see the S&P and the other markets here domestically start to go down. You'll see volatility in the bond market. You'll see bond yields spike here domestically in the U.S. because there will be a ton of selling pressure on those bonds. And that's when the banks will have to step in and start issuing stable coins to be able to soak up that demand, or drive that demand to be able to soak up all those treasuries flowing onto the market, stabilize the yield in the bond market. It's going to be a very scary situation for people that really don't understand what's happening. If you look at the same constraints that happened in August of 2024, when we were 13% down in the S&P in a single day, I think it's going to be very similar to that. I think that we're repricing in markets. I think we're going to see 30 to 50% down in markets in a very short period of time. Does that take a day, couple days? I don't know what it's going to be. I think that they'll step in quickly, right? And I think that's when you're going to see the BlackRock roll out their ETF for XRP, and many other people start piling on and start using XRP. I think that there could be implications for Tether. I don't know if it'll be depegged or sanctioned, or if they just start freezing a bunch of Tether on the network. And so people, run away from it. Jim Rickards has talked about, people losing trust in stable coins as a whole if Tether had some issues, and then other stable coins going illiquid, because a lot of people that I've talked to over the years are like, well, I'm going to try to buy when it's fallen. And I'm like, I really don't think you're going to be able to. I think that, exchanges are going to lock up. I think that networks are going to lock up. I think there's going to be a lot of problems. So I just continue to dollar cost average, continue to buy when I can, and hold that in institutional custody and wait on it to rip. We already have, partners available to be able to borrow against your XRP at reasonable interest rates. We're going to be announcing some cool new ways to hedge downside risk and volatility for those loans tonight with Arch Lending, who's our partner that's helped sponsor the event that we're hosting for the mastermind. So excited to be doing that with them. And I'm sure that we will talk about those products as soon as they've announced it there. I'll be able to talk about it here. But the interest rates are coming down and they're going to be able to hedge downside risk, which is awesome. And I think that's going to be the first avenue most people explore to be able to borrow against their XRP and get some liquidity. And then obviously, we're going to continue to work on the different opportunities we have at hand to be able to start generating yield or maybe even higher risk returns on the XRP for people that want to participate in that. K27 says, what do you think, Jake? May is our month. Man, it's looking good. Again, like if you want to put the tinfoil hat on, I don't know how many people in here look at Bearable Guy and the riddles and all that, but over the years, he's always said, May, God bless you all. I don't know if there's anything to that or not. There's also another one that's like the Muna and the Juna and the Springer. I love to sing you. That was another one of the riddles that was out there. So May, June, July, I'm watching closely here these next 3 months. All the constraints are literally falling into place for this to play out real time for us. So maybe Ripple and DAI and Brad know something. Maybe the next couple of days are going to be fun here for XRP Vegas. I don't know. We'll have to see. Again, I think, Ripple's likely going to announce Evernorth and then also potentially their FedMaster account here in the next couple of days at the event. Woody, say Carbon One member. I know you don't care about the Clarity Act, but can they kill the filibuster and pass the SAVE Act and Clarity Act? Thank you for all that you do. While I've been here, I've had some conversations with people that are working directly on the Clarity Act, like big names you guys would know. They are very unhopeful that the Clarity Act is going to get passed before midterms. The markup would need to be done in the next 10 weeks. You've got the SAVE Act, you've got the PACE Act. There's some other things and legislation that Congress could be voting on. Banks and Coinbase have had a hard time coming to a resolution on the yield, but now that the OCC has given full oversight on that, regulated it basically for how the Genius Act is going to be used, I don't think that's going to be a point of contention anymore. So without that in the way, could it move faster? Sure. But I just, DeFi is difficult to regulate. And there's a strong difference of opinion between Republicans and Democrats on what that should look like and how much oversight or freedom there should be in DeFi and how that's going to look in an institutional setting. I think that we're probably, I would love to say yes. Again, I was on Capitol Hill advocating for the Genius Act and the Clarity Act when the Genius Act was passed last year in the middle of the summer. And at that time, I told all you guys, I talked to congressmen and women. They said it's not going to pass until 2026. And here we are, May of 2026. And I'm telling you right now, based on the conversations I'm having, I don't think we're going to get it. And if we do, maybe it's like they rush it through somehow because they have to have it. But with the OCC regulating stablecoins, I don't see a reason that they would have to pass it very quickly. I think if they could roll that out, they could take their time. They can get the DeFi component of it right. And again, selfishly, XRP and the other 16 assets that the CFTC and the SEC gave joint guidance on doesn't really matter for the Clarity Act. And those are the primary assets that the majority of our clients are invested in and where we think the market's going. I think there's going to be a huge consolidation. Like there's not going to be 50,000 cryptos. There's going to be like less than 100 of these things. So all that being said, I am not hopeful that we're going to see the Clarity Act pass this year, at least before midterms, maybe after midterms. But I mean, that would be really late in the year, and it's probably going to be Q1 of 2027 when we get that through. DFW Mike, my man, he says, evening, boss. Thanks for all that you've done and will do. Huge shout out to Tish, giving her flowers for the Dallas meetup. She took it to the next level. She answered all the questions and put people at ease about things. She may have converted Sophia. Very good. Travel safe. Thank you, brother. Yeah, she's here with us in Vegas. We have multiple of our advisors here, man, in the booth. They'll also be at XRP Vegas walking around. Our CEO, Max Kahn, and Connor, or you guys know him as Mickle. He's here with us. We've got our new CIO, Lewis, who is also here. Lewis is from Grayscale. So excited to have him on board. We've got a bunch of new people that have come on. We got Kristen Marabella, who's from Gemini, who's come over. We've also got Cynthia, who was the chief compliance officer at US Bank, who's now on board with us. So I don't know if the press release went out or not, but I'm telling you guys here, we've got a rock star lineup of C-suite executives that have come over, and it doesn't stop. We got one more that we're going to announce in early May that I think you guys will be excited about. So really just super proud of the team that we're building, excited that they're going to be able to execute on everything that we're looking to do, and that people see the vision, right? I think that that's the coolest part is we've got the fire started. The bonfire is burning at this point, and people see the traction and what we're trying to accomplish, and they believe in the mission that we have to be able to democratize access to this stuff for retail and high net worth individuals and family offices, and to people that normally wouldn't be afforded these services. We want to make sure that people are in position to be able to capitalize to the full extent on the opportunities that they've invested in. And people are buying in, and we're seeing, a lot of prominent people from other firms taking a shift and moving our direction, which is cool. We got Poppy Dude. He says 3% XRP holder here. Starting the LLC. Wife is executor of my dad's estate. Can we include it and set up a trust for our kids? He supports this. Yeah, you absolutely could. Depending on what type of trust you need to structure, I'd go talk to Dan Plaskett. He's our main estate architect over there at the firm. You can ask for him based on your position and the other wealth that you want to roll in. That's probably the direction that I would go. His services are a little more expensive, so if you want to wait till post price appreciation to have those conversations, completely understand. We can do a revocable living trust for people. We charge $1,000 for that. Actually, maybe it's down to $750 now because we're no longer working with Laughlin, and we work with Trust and Will directly to be able to do that. And we negotiated down the rate. So if you do need a revocable living trust in your state, it's basic. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that a high-level estate planner would attach to this stuff. But if you need it for your crypto and your house and your normal everyday assets, you can absolutely work with us to get that structured. Just go to digitalfamilyoffice.io, and you can set up the trust there. We got Chris Dorn. He says, how long? I probably butchered your last name, man. I'm sorry. I like the 88 though. He says, how long will it take Ripple to integrate blockchain infrastructure into acquired platforms like Ripple Prime and Ripple Treasury? What could delay it? I think that they're actively working on that. And if I had to guess at a time frame, I would say Q3, Q4 this year would be when they could actually roll that out at scale and unify everything that they're looking to build for Ripple One. Blockchain infrastructure itself is a little bit different. So a lot of these legacy systems are going to continue to operate with these digital assets for a period of time and not even leverage the underlying technology. A lot of the settlement and execution will happen on chain, but a lot of the underwriting and all of the other portions of the transaction will continue to operate off chain until Chainlink and a lot of these other systems are a little bit more robust and can integrate smart contracts, and commerce actually starts happening on chain. Settlement and that piece has to happen first. First, we had to have custody and digital identity, credentials, all that stuff, so that they could enforce KYC, AML, OFAC, and BIS standards that banks and institutions require. And they've done all that. I think they've laid the groundwork, and now they're building the scaffolding on top of that to erect the house. And it's coming together quickly. I do think that that'll happen here in 2026, probably toward the end of the year, though. Wager Rewards says there's a lot of charts and people say that the price will drop back to around $1.15 before we actually pop and pump and go. What do you feel about catalysts, and what are we waiting for? Again, I'm just dollar cost averaging here. I'm not worried about, short-term volatility. If it goes down, cool, buy a little bit more. If it goes up, awesome. But all that being said, Friday this week, we have stablecoin regulation for the banks coming from the OCC. We don't need it from the Clarity Act. And to me, that's the green light. That's the last piece that we've been waiting on. And the other piece that would inhibit Ripple's ability to operate at scale is just that Fed Master account. They have the OCC preliminary charter, and they've got that. I think Kraken or one of the other ones was awarded their Fed Master account first. But I think that's what Ripple really needs in order to be able to operate at scale. And I do think that there's a possibility that or Evernorth is what they're going to be announcing this week at XRP Vegas. He says again, what make that happen in both directions? You said you don't think we need to wait for Clarity Act to pass, but isn't that what all the institutions are waiting? No. Look, like I talk with all these institutions, they need stablecoin regulation in order to be able to issue stablecoins. For them to operate with crypto, they're commodities. The CFTC is already given guidance around that. I think we're going to see very quick adoption of these assets in very short order. As soon as stable coins and there's more liquidity on chain, they won't be able to ignore it anymore or defer it out. And as Ripple or other institutions start to settle between counterparties, they will have to adopt this stuff. They will need to hold, and the OCC already gave them the green light to hold digital assets on their balance sheet. They already said that how they're going to be taxed and regulated for the institutions. So they're literally waiting on this stablecoin regulation. I think that's the green light, and I think things are ready to grow. I don't think we need the Clarity Act, and they're not going to be using DeFi in the short term. That'll come later, and that's pretty much what Clarity needs to define is like, what is that going to look like? You also have the PACE Act that's come out that allows fintechs and other non-financial bodies to be able to access a Fed window and participate at scale. So that would be beneficial for Ripple, right? But they've already got their banking license, and they've already applied for their Fed window. So I think that's what they're going to get, and then I think the PACE Act will come along behind that to allow, Google and Apple and a lot of these other wallet providers that are on your device to be able to access those same networks and payment rails. Let's see here. He's hit me with a bunch of questions. Again, he says, green flag. XRP just seems so stagnant. I don't understand what catalysts we're waiting for before the movement in both directions. And then finally get to see these switches flip that. Again, I'm going to keep going back to the OCC and what they're doing here on Friday. He said, we've been hearing about it for so long. I'm with you, dude. And that's why, I've told everybody for a long time, we don't need the Clarity Act. We just need guidance from the regulators. And now we have that. We have both the CFTC and the SEC giving guidance, and the OCC as well. And with them actually, providing guidance around this asset class, there are clear rules of the road so that everybody can move forward. We don't need Clarity. And we already have it for XRP and also many other assets at this point. Native Texan says, what's up, dude? Just want to say thanks for all the work that you guys, thanks. Only going to work with you guys post price appreciation. Everything is looking super spicy. Any extra tinfoil hat. You guys have heard me say it before, but I will say it again. There have been multiple videos where Ripple in the background has had, 20 to 2, which is 140, which is where the price is at for XRP. And it's been hanging out there for months. So it would not surprise me if we get back to 140, and that's where things, get real weird. Football Maniac says, hey, Jake, have you ever heard of Ryan Fruger? Have you heard of Ryan Fruger interview? And did you hear that Adkins said Bitcoin Vegas sounds like he was explaining XRP? And did you hear what Adkins said at Bitcoin Vegas? I didn't get to listen to Paul speak, but yeah, I mean, if you're paying attention, you understand that they're talking about distributed ledger technology, and it's not Bitcoin for payments. Satoshi's original vision was, that it was a peer-to-peer payment system that was separate of the government. But I think, Rip Mickle actually pointed this out the other day, that I think Satoshi's vision would have had to evolve over time. And I think it did. I think Arthur Brito is much more involved with both Bitcoin and XRP than people think. I've never met Arthur. I've only ever seen one picture of him on the internet. He's a very private person. But David Schwartz has said that he wasn't involved, but he did know who Satoshi was. They've worked together a lot, in my opinion. But yeah, Ryan Fruger back in Canada in 2004. There's been a lot of things that have gone on with the NSA and the CIA and other government agencies that I think have been working on this for a long time. And Bitcoin, I think it served a lot of different purposes and will continue to serve a few purposes. I'm still thinking that over the long term, I think Bitcoin will be wrapped on other networks, but I think a lot of the infrastructure that's been used to mine Bitcoin is going to be rehypothecated for large amounts of compute for AI. The ASICs that are used currently in that infrastructure would have to be replaced with something else. A lot of the mining pools that mined Ethereum before it moved to proof of stake have already been rehypothecated for AI infrastructure and distributed compute all over the world. And I think if you wanted distributed compute at scale and you needed a way to incentivize people to build that out, Bitcoin has been a fantastic catalyst for that. I mean, you build right next to substations. It's pushed people to generate additional power. There's a lot of things there. So I think there were multiple objectives accomplished with Bitcoin, and like the Strait of Hormuz and many other things. It's a multi-pronged approach with one thing that leads to a lot of different outcomes that institutions and governments are trying to push forward on. We got Bob, Mr. Dillon. He says, are Japan and the U.S. markets, XRP market makers, ready for reverse carry trade? Not until we can issue stable coins at scale here domestically in the U.S. And again, on Friday this week, we should have the green light from the OCC on that. I can hang out for another 15 minutes or so, and I got to wrap it up because I got to get to dinner. We got Jay, the crypto man. He says, Jake, they announced today that Tom Tills, he's ready to mark up in 2 weeks once they return from break. Senator Tom Tills. Again, they only have 10 weeks to get this done. That's it. And the back and forth that's continued to go on. And so once they mark it up, cool, mark it up. It's still got to pass both the Senate and the House. There's a lot of voting. There's a lot of things that are going to be taking place. People's attention is going to be on other stuff. They have multiple other bills that need to be, voted on before that one. The SAVE Act is going to be the first thing before either the PACE Act or the Clarity Act even get to vote. Again, if I could tell you who I talked to here, you'd be like, oh yeah, he's definitely going to know over anybody else. So, and a couple people in that room. So anyway, all that being said, I'm not confident that we might get the markup done, but we're not going to get a vote across the line before the midterms, in my opinion. Excited, again, don't want any collateral damage for anything going on over there in Iran and everything that's happening, but they're going to continue to block the strait until this plays out. And I think this is Trump pushing his pressure point to make sure that, we see the outcomes that we know are inevitable, but I think he does as well. Dr. Denise, hey ma'am, she says, bravo, Jake, hunt well for yield products. Thanks. We have met multiple people here at Bitcoin Vegas, others that are attending XRP Vegas. Our team will be here for the rest of the week, pushing as hard as we can. I'm really excited because, every time we get blocked one direction, we're running down another path to be able to figure this out. And so with this, before we were focused on one or two ways to be able to generate yield, we now have somewhere between 5 and 8 different products or paths to be able to get some type of product across the line. And I think all of these will get across the line in the next 3 to 6 months. So we're going to have a very large breadth of products and solutions for our clients at Digital Wealth Partners to put their XRP and other digital assets to work. and generate returns or yield, and then also be able to borrow against those and service that debt that way. So pretty exciting stuff. Liquid staking, is on my mind. I want to be able to borrow against my assets that are earning enough interest to be able to service the debt themselves so that they pay themselves off. That's the long-term goal for us. Like I've talked about lots of times, like a HELOC on a home that you have rented out. That's the end game for XRP and Bitcoin and these other assets. So, no tax implications. You get your liquidity. You get to maintain ownership of the asset as it continues to accrue value over time, and it services its own debt. That is the magic sauce. And if you can do that inside of an ILET, an irrevocable life insurance trust, now you've mitigated taxes, probate protection, your creditor protection, you have probate. The assets are going to pass back to your estate with no estate taxes. And we're building all these things real time. We got Mach 5050. They say, hey, Jake, thanks for all the wisdom and helping us out. You are very kind and explain very well. Do you think dealerships will accept XRP for cars? I don't know. I wouldn't give my XRP over for a car. I wouldn't give my XRP over for a house either. I don't want to liquidate the position. So that's why I like Milo. They're the company that we've been talking to about, the mortgage, but being able to cross collateralize your crypto. So you don't have to sell your crypto. It just sits there. They basically issue a loan against that, but they cross collateralize it with the property. So they're able to lower the interest rate substantially, and your crypto can continue to appreciate, and you don't have to sell it. Right. And so it continues to accrue value, go up. And eventually, if it went up like 1,000x or 10x or 20x or whatever it is, it's just a small portion that you could sell to be able to cover the rest of that loan if you wanted to, or you could just pay the loan off over time with other income from your other assets or your businesses or whatever else you have. So car dealerships could do the same thing. I mean, if you were a lender on a car and you wanted to allow somebody to post their crypto as collateral to be able to, finance the car without selling the crypto, and then as the crypto appreciates, you're able to pull whatever is above the LTV required back out of it. I think that'd be the way that I would prefer to do it. I don't want to have to sell, significantly appreciated assets and pay the capital gains tax on it to then go buy a liability like a car. Leasing is going to be everybody's best friend on the other side of this, unless you need the tax write-off, and then you're going to be buying something over 6,000 pounds if you're here domestic in the U.S. KK Pawn, he says, sup, bro. What does the OCC S-Coin regulation unlock and why it matters for XRP? I'm assuming you mean stablecoin, not S-Coin. It is what's needed for the Bank of Japan to move forward with unwinding the reverse carry trade. We have to have a way to be able to stabilize the bond market here domestically in the U.S. And the only demand that's going to be driven that could, suffice in that situation is going to be from the banks issuing stable coins and buying up those treasuries. So, that is a key piece or a linchpin in this whole deal to be able to let everything else unfold like I've talked about in the domino theory. They're not going to let it unwind if the bond market is going to be stabilized and it's going to cause a financial collapse. They have to be able to drive demand domestically here in the U.S. for those treasuries as they flow onto the market. All right. We got Big Cat, my man. He says, spoke with Sam with DWP. I'll see you tonight. Awesome, dude. Glad to see you at the event. I would say where it is, but we're already at capacity for the people that have registered for that event for the mastermind. So very excited for that tonight. We should have, over 300 people at the venue that we have here in Vegas. Excited to see you guys. If you want to be part of the mastermind, we would love to have you. All you got to do is go to beyondbroke.com and use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2, and you can figure out where the event is if you are here in Vegas. Separate to that, if you need help on the family office side, you want some estate planning, ability to mitigate taxes, structuring yourself, all that stuff, you can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and just set up a time with one of our advisors there. Or you can go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com and go ahead and set up the LLC if you know that's what you need. And then last but not least, if you do have at least $100,000 in digital assets, we would love to work with you at Digital Wealth Partners. You can go to digitalwealthpartners.net. And then last but not least, I promised you guys a promo. So if you have more than 1.1 million in Bitcoin or XRP, we are going to drop the AUM fees at Digital Wealth Partners down to 40 bips. So what would normally be $10 million with us in order to be able to get that break in fees, we are going to extend to anybody that has more than 1.1 million in Bitcoin or XRP for the next 30 days. So that applies to our current clients also. If you're watching this and you have more than that with us, and your AUM fees are higher than that, you will be, we're dropping your AUM fees. Again, want to take care of people that take care of us. And then separate to that, we're also looking at putting together like a loyalty program. We got to figure out the compliance on this, but I want to get some feedback from you guys. We take care of people that take care of us, and the people that are, in it for the long term. We're thinking about, like each year we drop your AUM fees by like a couple bips, just to show appreciation for clients that stick with us for a long term. So, if you get to the 40 bip mark and then you're with us for, call it, 20 years, you'd be effectively paying zero after 20 years. And we might be a little more aggressive. It might be a graded scale. I don't know exactly how we're going to roll that out, but we're playing with that because we want people to, people that have stuck around deserve some kickback, some love, So looking at that, and so anything over 1.1 million in Bitcoin or XRP, or if your total portfolio is over 1.1 and we can custody all the assets, I'm sure we can figure something out for you. But that promotion is going to run for the next 30 days. So around XRP Vegas and everything else here for Bitcoin Vegas. Excited to bring that to you guys. I know that doesn't apply to everybody, and there's going to be a lot of people that are like, well, I have a lot less than that, so it doesn't matter for me. I know we're working on things for you too, I promise. But this is what we're able to run with right now. And I wanted to get it out to you guys. So if that is you and you are thinking about working with us, but you're like, the fees are going to be too much, we would love to have a conversation here in the next 30 days and make sure you get your assets into institutional custody. They're safe, secure, assured, and you can sleep easy at night. So with that, I am going to wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Excited to see everybody that's here in Vegas tonight at our event. Fun things happening out there in the market. We'll keep you guys updated. God bless, and we'll see you on the next one.